the big news that everyone's been talking about regarding Ukraine. It comes as we know that Putin and Trump are going to engage in what are likely going to be many more talks than just one. We've just had a major battlefield development I want to pull up here. Pokrovsk front collapsing. I'm reading more than 11 kilometers now of advancement in this axis. And here you see the map. It's looking very, very bad as Russian forces are essentially moving to not only encircle Pokrovsk in the Dobropilia area, but also the Konstantinivka area. I'm butchering those names. How about you react to the latest developments, not just on the battlefield, but they are shaping this overall environment where we have Donald Trump. He's saying that Putin reached out to him, but many are surmising that it's the collapse of Ukraine that is actually pressuring the United States to come to the table once again. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, thank you, Danny. I'm looking at it a little bit differently than a lot of people. I'm looking at it more reverse, that the Donald Trump has called this meeting. Clearly, why would the U.S. call any ceasefire? Or what? Just look at the beginning of the Trump administration. Every single, from Gaza to Iran, to the attack on Iran, to the various, impasses with Ukraine, at every single juncture, the U.S. or its allies will call for, a meeting or negotiations to buy time. That's because in the absence of any articulated policy change, which in the case of Ukraine, we see nothing. We see absolutely nothing. This is what I've been saying for, the last couple of weeks to different pundits and on my show as well, is that I don't see anything said or articulated that leads me to believe that the United States, that the Trump administration has any better understanding of the conflict whereby they would be able to sit down and agree with terms with Russia. So there would be some meeting of the minds. And if you don't have that, I can't imagine how they could. Russia's not going to give any concessions, obviously, because they're winning. Why would they? And what on earth could the United States bargain with, just based on what we've heard and which has been said vocally and rhetorically? It absolutely is not, compatible with the Russian demands that we've seen. Now, with Trump, it's all shrouded in mystery. They're saying, "Oh, Witkoff, special envoy, has been sent, and Russia's agreed on terms, and they're offering something the United States is interested in, vice versa." What Russia's position hasn't changed. It hasn't changed since December 2021. The only thing that's changed are the facts on the ground in Ukraine, and the fact that Russia has basically gained some new regions for the Russian Federation. So that's the only real material change, which is not in favor of Ukraine or the United States. So again, less leverage, less bargaining position from the U.S. So Trump has nothing. But for Trump, it's important to go public, to look like the United States is in the driving seat, that they're dictating the pace of events, and that Trump has leverage, and he's going to get a good deal because he's known as the art of the deal guy. But there's no deal here for the United States. There's nothing for the Trump administration. But so that's what I've understood from this. I don't see anything that leads us to believe that there's going to be anything new here. What I see is the U.S. buying time. They're trying to buy time in order to change facts on the ground, because they believe that they can change facts on the ground. But the reality is they can't, but they believe they can if they. So what's the surprise? What's going to be the big reveal? And the big reveal is going to be what happened before the last negotiations at Istanbul, and what happened after.
Yeah. Yep. Surprise attack.
So this ultimatum came from Trump. Trump gave an ultimatum to the Iranians, 60 days. On the 61st day, there was a sneak attack. After the Istanbul agreement, Russia sent a full delegation. What did the U.S. do? And the British and the Ukrainians, they stabbed them in the back. They did not only in a sneak attack, but an egregious attack on Russia's nuclear deterrent. That's a major geopolitical provocation. That's enough to say all bets are off. We're going to war. Okay, that's what the U.S. did. That's the track record. Now the question is Russia that stupid? Is Russia that stupid, or who is playing who here? And if that's the case, is Russia setting the U.S. and Ukraine up for a fall? Because all Russia has to do actually is run the clock out, you see. So, and we've also said this for a very long time, is that the timeline politically for Russia is long. Okay, they have the balance of resolve, they have the strategic depth, they have the balance of force on their side. They have all these things on their side. And politically, Vladimir Putin's under no pressure. There's no election coming up. There's no House election, by-election coming up in 2026 or whatever. There's no, Republican House and Senate. That's an issue in the U.S. Trump's MAGA base is fracturing. There are all sorts of problems there. He's got to get buy-in to get other parts of his agenda pushed through. Russia doesn't have any problems like that. So what's the reality of the situation is that we have the Ukrainians, and Zelensky in particular, is on a very short leash politically, and the U.S. is on a short leash. The British are desperate. The Europeans are desperate, because if Russia's even seen to win, this is an absolute abject defeat for Brussels, for NATO, for the collective ego of Europe and the UK. So and again, if Donald Trump could negotiate a deal, he cannot guarantee that Zelensky and the far right in Ukraine are going to be on side with it. He can't vouch for the British. He can't vouch for the Europeans. They're already dog whistling attacks.
Yeah.
So he's got nothing. He can do nothing with Russia other than get a photo op in Alaska, a handshake, some headlines. And I think Russia's well aware of this. And, or have Zelensky jump out of the closet in his green t-shirt. Say, I'm here, Putin. How, this injustice won't stand. I mean, do it like some kind of a press stunt. That's the only risk of having it on U.S. soil, is that Zelensky could show up, or be in town, or, be sort of praying there at the airport, freezing in Alaska, although it's warm now in August. I mean, I don't know. I can't see what Russia would gain, but then I'm like, if Russia can play this, run the clock out, or go with Trump with some kind of an agreement, which the Russians know that the Ukrainians are not going to accept. And if Zelensky is seen to veto a deal, at least that's going to cause political instability in Ukraine, which is already unstable. And that's to Russia's advantage. So Putin and Moscow could very well be playing Trump, here, because just the fundamentals of this, according to what Washington's wanting people to think, it doesn't make any sense.
And that's why I named this Putin has cornered Trump in many ways by all those facts that you have laid out, without really having to. It's not loud. It doesn't have to be loud. It's the facts on the ground, as you said. And I think one of the things that people don't understand about this trap that Trump is in, and that any U.S. president would be in, is that really the only way to make peace is to assert that you have total dominance over this proxy, which then blows up the whole game. It blows up the whole war. The United States would have to settle with Russia, essentially expose itself, as it's been trying really hard to do, expose itself as the actual puppet master and not simply the mediator, which it is posing right now. Your thoughts?
From that point of view, the Trump administration is just basically, pretending to do diplomacy. And that's what Steve Witkoff is. I call him the Del Boy of diplomacy. He's like, if you're British, you know what that means. But just basically a chancer, somebody who's just kind of showing up in the suit, the meter and the greeter kind of thing at the casino, but doesn't run the casino. and he doesn't really have any depth of understanding of anything. He couldn't even name the Donbass regions in an interview with Tucker Carlson. That was, his big coming out interview. He couldn't even name the Donbass regions. And I'm saying, okay, so that's the de facto Secretary of State. All right. So they're BSing their way through it. Okay. So there's like zero chance that they are able to grasp and are going to deliver anything. Because if the people involved, like Trump and Wickoff, don't really have a fundamental understanding, to them, this is, and the way they've articulated this publicly, and they may think differently behind the scenes, but that doesn't really work in politics, especially in this situation. Like, whatever your knowledge is, you've got to articulate that publicly. But to them, it's a real estate dispute. It's a land and a border dispute. No, it's much, much deeper than that. This is a national security issue. It's an existential issue. This is an extension in many ways of the Cold War. This is about collective security. It's about in the indivisibility of security. If I say security indivisibility to Donald Trump, is he going to understand what that means? Is he going to have any idea, or is that going to go like right over his head? And if that's the case, then this guy can't do anything. He's not going to deliver anything. If you put a team of baboons, and you can say, build a rocket and take us to the moon, I can bet you they're not going to do it. They might do after a couple million years and enough bananas. But so if the people that we see that don't even understand or know what the Minsk peace process was, the fact that it was codified as a UN Security Council Resolution 2202, if they don't understand that, why that broke down and what it led to and what was going on behind the scenes, if they don't understand any of this, then there's no way that team of baboons is going to take us to the moon with a peace deal. It's impossible. They're out of their depth. So if that's who's in charge, unless there's a secret team of geniuses behind the scenes that we don't see, like a secret super Sherpa team of diplomats, I don't think they're there. It's like, so I mean, there's nothing's going to happen here. So I think from that point of view, Trump is painted himself into such a corner. He's raised expectations to such a degree as he came into office, was elected on stopping this and every other conflict. And he's done just the opposite. So now he can't really deliver on any of that. So now he's stuck with plan B. And then he doesn't even know, what plan B is or what it can do, because the plan A was arm the Ukrainians and wear down the Russians and overextend Russia. And then, eventually the Putin regime would collapse from within. That was the Democrat plan. And Trump said, well, no, we're going to do it differently. But he's kind of back to that default in terms of what's actually happening with policy. But then all the rhetoric, oh yeah, we're gonna bring this thing to an end. It's just, he's saying, oh, they're killing each other. They're killing each other. No, you're killing Russians. U.S. is killing Russians. British are killing Russians. NATO's killing Russians through Ukraine with all of our gear and kit and intelligence and whatnot. Russia's not killing any Americans. Russia's not killing any Europeans. They're not killing any British, not official soldiers.
Yeah. Well, if there are those mercenaries running around,
NATO's little green men running around in Ukraine. So that means they're co-belligerents. So you can't, if you're a co-belligerent, you can't pretend to, referee negotiations. It's impossible. It's not going to work. Russia knows all this. I really don't think Russia takes the Trump administration seriously, but they'll give him, they've learned to help him pump himself up. And Russia's actually the one who is going to get time to change facts on the ground, as you just showed with the military advance and the fact that, by the time they're faffing about for the next 2 months, Russia will be all the way to the Dnieper River. And then we're getting close to surrender terms at that point. If they decide they want to keep fighting, That's going to be difficult, because once Russia reaches the Dnieper River, then potentially they could cut off Kharkiv supply lines. Potentially they could make an advance on Kiev at some point as a symbolic advance. But Russia also understands something else, is that given enough time, they could easily agree on an interim deal. And they know that the political situation is so tenuous in Ukraine, especially in Odessa and places like this, that parts of Ukraine will collapse from within, that there will be resistance in Ukraine. Russia's tracking all of this. Anti-Zelensky resistance, disgruntled military, even Nazis that want Zelensky out, Nazis allying with pro-Russian dissidents. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. That's what's going to happen over time. Russia knows this. They'll play that game out 10 years. Fine, draw the lines where they are today. We'll see how they end up in 5 years. And that's the reality. Because they know when the Zelensky and the Ukrainian armed forces collapse, compared to where they were, in terms of cohesion 2 years ago, then all of these areas that are dominated by Russian speaking, or what they call ethnic Russian populations, the hold that Kiev and the West will have over these regions becomes very tenuous. And that's a game changer. And that can only happen over time. Time's on Russia's side. It's not on Kiev's side. It's not on Washington's side. It's not on Brussels' side.
We see the Trump administration. Here's Donald Trump already predicting, essentially, that these talks may not end up with anything, as you said.
Go and see the parameters. Now, I may leave and say good luck, and then at the end, I may say this.
So he may leave and say good luck, and that this won't be settled at all. But then you have this dynamic that you just spoke about that is now finding and surfacing, just without the astute analysis in mainstream media. The European Union, Zelensky, no concessions, none. They're never going to accept anything that might come out of U.S.-Russia talks. And to me, I believe that this is all intentional. It's not incidental. It's not simply that the Europe is so angry with the United States and Zelensky cannot believe what's going on. I think that there is a lot of attempts to sow plausible deniability so that now Europe and Zelensky can look like they are actually the ones who are running the show. And that essentially allows the United States to keep doing what it's doing and continue the war. But I want to know your assessment of this dynamic, because it's showing up on our screens as Europe versus Trump, Zelensky versus Trump, whenever there are any kind of hints that the U.S. is just talking to Russia, let alone anything coming out of it.
Yeah, they're panicking. And so that's another way to look at it, is that the U.S. is basically creating a situation, riled up the Europeans, put them on high alert, put Zelensky and his regime and his project, which is, the bagman, to bring the cash and the weapons to Ukraine. And he's putting that basically in jeopardy. And so that does, but only if, Danny, if the policy is for the U.S. to step back and have Europe take over this debacle and have the U.S. play a secondary role. But there's no way the U.S. can ever play a secondary role. They're going to be playing a primary role on ISR, on defense, on intelligence, and geopolitically. This is a nuclear power, Russia. So there's no way the U.S. can take a back seat. So I really don't buy. I have a hard time buying this J.D. Vance, MAGA position. Well, let's let the Europeans handle this. Because if you look at where the money is going, and I always follow the money, and the money, the American money, is into NATO expansion, undoubtedly. From especially looking at Scandinavia, 47 new bases in Scandinavia, Denmark, around the Horn, Denmark, Finland, Sweden, Norway, 47. That'll be a
Welcome
bigger
to
military
NATO.
Yeah, that's NATO. It's effectively NATO plus the Arctic. So this is a bigger expansion than even the Middle East. Okay, so if that's where the money is, then how on earth is the United States receding? So I really don't. If you're just going to follow the headlines, as many people are content to do when they heard about this meeting, that, oh, look, this is it. Something's going to happen here. Trump wants to end this thing. I just can't trust this administration's going to say, or sorry, do what it's going to say or means what it's saying at any time. I just can't, because they've let us down every single time. So, and I don't see any changes in the rhetoric. I don't see any epiphany. There's no epiphany like when you're saying, oh, wow, this is a change. Look at this attitude change here. They're actually seeing reality. We've had 7-8 months now. There's none of that. So that means the policy can't be changing. And the policy is encirclement of Russia, weakening Russia, ultimately defeating Russia, or making Russia a subservient client entity to the West, and then breaking it up, and then taking Georgia, and then, adding Georgia and Azerbaijan to NATO. Moldova. Moldova is a perfect example. So what they're going to do, and this is why Trump is just. I mean, I don't want to use hyperbole, because it's just the Democrats have been doing this for so long with Trump.
Right. They make it about Trump. Yes, exactly.
But he is an idiot. I mean, let's just be honest. He's not that bright. He doesn't really. He's trying to BS his way through subject areas that clearly there's a plethora of experts, including his other statesmen, his counterparts, that are much more knowledgeable and articulate than him. And rather than being respectful and having smart advisors, he's surrounded himself with grifters and people that he trusts who don't know anything about anything. And he's trying, they are trying to BS their way through the process, which is highly disrespectful. And it doesn't breed any confidence for the rest of us that are looking at this situation saying this could really spin out of control very easily into a broader conflict, maybe even a nuclear standoff. And this guy's only in office for 3 years. I mean, Russia's just like, who's this clown? We just had Biden 7 months ago, and this clown's in. Look, he's worse than Biden. And who's the next clown going to be? Russia's like, who's the next clown going to be in 2028? Is it going to be Rubio? Who, and then what do we have to deal with then? I think almost like Russia's getting so thick-skinned with U.S. politics now that they're like, wow, we just have to play the game with the Americans and get on and do what we need to do. And it's going to be a tough grind, but we're not going to be distracted or getting our hopes up that they're going to be able to sign in any treaty, much less ratify it in their respective legislatures in the West. I mean, come on. What are there? Imagine a treaty that's drawn up right now with Ukraine. How on earth would that ever get agreed on between the U.S., Europe, and the U.K. and Ukraine? What are the chances of that? And then once it's agreed in principle, what are the chances of that being codified by law in all the parliamentary legislatures? I mean, it's almost zero. So what are we left with? Status quo. And what are they going to do? Watch, Danny. They'll start to move more aggressively on the Romanian border front. They will start to move more aggressively via Moldova.
Yes, Moldova.
And also in the Baltics with the U.S. land commander for NATO. I think his name's Chris Donahue. Yes. He was at a conference. You probably saw this last week.
Right, we played it here. Yes.
Okay, and he's talking about Kaliningrad. And we have already drawn up a plan to, all the area denial systems that the Russians have. We're going to take all those out. We're going to do that really quick, and it's going to be done this, and then we're going to do that. And this is a weak part for Russia. That's World War III talk right there. There's nuclear weapons in Kaliningrad. So like what kind of game are you guys playing here? Imagine the Russians publicly holding conferences saying this kind of stuff publicly, the heads of the Russian defense, like, we think we found a weak spot here in Europe, and we're going to take that out in like 2 weeks. I mean, the arrogance of this, but the
To a
danger
nuclear
of it,
power as well. To say that about a nuclear power is incredible, but continue.
yeah. So there's no deal to be had. There's no deal to be had for the United States. I don't see it, and they're buying. The British believe that they can buy time, that through drone swarms and some of the new tech they have and sabotage operations that are already planned, that they'll be able to really make life difficult for the Russians and maybe even assassinate the Russian leadership or whatever. It's in the British Defense Review. It's called Operation Killweb. It's drone swarms, and Spider's Web was the sort of opening gambit for that. And they think that if they can draw this out for a couple of years through this tech, in much the way the Israelis have done in different ways with Hezbollah and the Iranians and so forth, that they'll be able to basically get what they want in the end. They're going to win through perseverance and dedication and focus on that one goal, which is regime change in Russia, and to sow chaos among the Russian ranks. And they think this is a winning formula, and they're not going to give up. I'm afraid to say they're not going to give up. And where's that going to lead us? Where's that going to lead? What's Russia going to do if it's existentially threatened on that level?
If it's not this war, Patrick, it'll be another one, and it could, as you intimated earlier, it could be nuclear. It could very well be, because I think what the Trump administration, I want to play this for you, Pat. I think what the Trump administration has really exposed, I agree with you. When we talk about the intellect of someone like Donald Trump, when we say stupid, I'm not even looking at that as going after Trump based on his personality characteristics. It's realizing that somebody like him, who literally does not care or know anything about what's going on in Ukraine, can be elevated to this level because he has people who are misadvising, manipulating. Pete Hegseth, one of the grifters that you are referencing, his messaging, they lie through their teeth all the time to us, but when they speak, it is meaningful in the sense that it really does expose what this is about if we're looking hard enough.
President Trump has changed the game. He's created the conditions for a possible negotiated settlement, which is his goal from the beginning, at a very complex battlefield. I don't think Vladimir Putin would be meeting unless he's felt that heat. And I think we can't. The president's laid out the parameters, and so is Steve Witkoff and others who are in we're in the strength side of the peace through strength business. But on the negotiating side, there's going to be, could be land swaps. There's going to be concessions. No one's going to be happy.
What they're communicating is Putin was feeling the heat. Russia is feeling the heat. So therefore, we are on the strength of the peace through strength side. And this is supposed to communicate to us that we are in good hands despite everything that you are covering. So your reaction to this, Pat?
Yeah, just it's one trope after another. Peace through strength, land swaps, Putin's feeling the heat. So the Fox News presenter is now basically come out full style. Pete Hegseth there, and falling back on talking points, which is what you do if you're in the U.S. mainstream media. You just fall back on tropes, talking points, and there's no strength. There's no strength. Trump is such a weak leader, and he's such a weak leader. You cannot be a strong leader. You cannot wield a strong hand in any negotiations internationally. This is not a casino in Atlantic City. No. We're talking about the game of nations. Okay, all of your other skills, Donald, are irrelevant. They're not transferable to this situation, because the depth we're talking about, the depth of this deal, goes back hundreds of years. You have to understand that. You've got to allow that to permeate your below the surface of who you are, and you need to feel that history and really understand it in the way that historians, academics, career diplomats, veteran negotiators in international affairs understand. Okay. They really appreciate and understand these things. And only then can you go and understand only then can you put yourself in the position of the other side, of the other counterparty. That's what's required for this level. This is high wire act diplomacy. The requirements, the prerequisites for this type of engagement in international relations is so high. The pedigree is traditionally so high. We're talking about the past U.S. teams from Reagan, from Bush Sr., even Clinton, fluent in Russian. Some of the chief diplomats, the ones who are designing the deals, who are really putting it together and doing all of the closed-door meetings, they're fluent in Russia and probably 3 other languages. What about the Trump administration? What sort of caliber of persons do we have here? Not anything like that. So the deal, if there was a deal, that deal would be Russia would want sanctions lifted. Of course, that's something they're going to ask for. They're going to want that $320 billion in stolen Russian assets held in Euroclear in Belgium. They're going to want that. The money they've been threatening to give to Ukraine to pay for all the weapons and this and that. They're going to want an end to threats of destroying their tankers and their shadow fleet. They want to be able to sell oil and gas to Europe, to the world. They want to lift that price cap on Russian oil. They're going to want an absolute guarantee that there is no NATO membership for Ukraine in the future, and that NATO will stop trying to expand into the Caucasus and Central Asia, full stop. That includes Azerbaijan, Georgia, and Moldova, you could say, but maybe they might give Moldova away on that. That's what Russia would be looking at initially from the U.S. Now, if the U.S. could deliver all of those things for Russia, and maybe they could, maybe even Trump could, but Russia's not going to give any serious concessions on their side. So what does this negotiation actually look like? Like, who is in the driving seat? It's not the United States. So, and that's the problem. It's political suicide for anyone in America like Pete Hegseth to go on there and say, my God, we're really behind the 8 ball on this, guys. Mm-hmm. I'm Pete Hegseth, defense secretary, and we are really in the you-know-what. Okay, we have really hit rock bottom here, and, we don't really have any answers. And, if we don't do X, Y, and Z, then I'm just going to resign. I'm going to fall on my sword. Like any self-respecting politician that wants to see a future of honor and credibility in their political future would have to threaten to resign at this point in order to shock the Trump administration into reality. But nobody's going to do that, because we know that's not the done thing these days. And that's for the Democrats as well. What happened to the Biden administration? A slow demise. You watched it. We saw it. That slow.
They all went along with it.
That disintegration of credibility right across the Democratic ranks.
Even the Bernie Sanderses, they just went along with it.
Everybody. It was so bad. Even Kamala Harris couldn't even distance herself from it when she took the baton from Biden, because there's nobody that, like, for instance, the perfect person that should resign would have been Tulsi Gabbard under the Trump administration over the Iran intelligence assessment thing. Perfect. And that would have set her up as probably the most credible politician. But no, in the 21st century, that's not allowed in politics. Bad for the career.
Down. There was, it was despicable.
So, that's not going to happen. And so what are we left with here? It's just games.